Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field report. Hope everyone had a safe and fun for it. This weekend we made the trip to northeast Iowa to canoe in the upper Iowa, which got canceled due to high water. It was about a 385-mile trip. The crops the first 220 miles looked exceptional. That poor field here and there would catch your eye. But when you get to Dubuque, Iowa, Route 20 running east and west across Iowa, the crop starts to come apart from water damage. You don't have to go too far north of Route 20, and it's the good-looking fields every now and then that catch your eye. Most good fields are a function of drainage, either having some good slope in the field or a lot of tile close together. Saw a lot of yellow, stunted corn and stalled-out beans, a lot of fields that need to be sprayed, but they're too wet. I must admit the affected area is bigger than I expected, taking in the northern tier of Iowa, the southern tier of Minnesota, and central Wisconsin. This will be big enough to affect the supply, at least for the local mills and ethanol plants, but I imagine it'll be well after harvest before the market figures that out. Most of the April corn here has pollinated exceptionally well. The insect pressure is low, so even the late emergers got pollinated. The balance of our corn will be pollinating over the next 2 weeks. Getting a lot of calls on tar spot. Is it here? Should we spray? When should we spray? What should we spray? The first question I ask is, do you see tar spot in your fields? Yeah. Most responses are, I don't know, but it's a hot topic in the coffee shop. We don't use the coffee shop in place of our pest management team. If your operations pest boss does his scouting in the coffee shop, you may have the wrong person in that position. While there are several confirmed tar spottings or sightings mainly in the wetter areas, the guys in Tazewell County did find some in irrigated corn on corn. So far in our plots, we have not found tar spot. We see a lot of potential tar spots, but so far when we're able to wipe them off, meaning that it's insect droppings. Now don't be afraid to get aggressive trying to wipe these spots off. If it's true tar spot, you won't be able to wipe it off. Making the right call on tar spot has several factors to it. I do expect to see tar spot in most places by harvest. When and how hard it comes plays the biggest role in how much damage it will do and how you manage it. Our biggest threat is from what we call homegrown tar spot. The infection comes from our field triggered by the presence of disease from the past. Homegrown tar spot will be more prevalent in your corn on corn and in no-till and strip-till fields that still have past corn residue in them. I would say check your most susceptible hybrids first, but very few hybrids have resistance to tar spot, so check them all. Homegrown tar spot will be the easiest to find below the ear. Later, when this disease is wind blowing around like a morning fog, you'll find it high on the plant. We have different camps on fungicide spraying. One group is not going to scout or spray. Product is too expensive, corn is too cheap. This group has not lived through the wrath of tar spot yet. One group is not going to scout, but they do have one pass of fungicide planned. One group will scout and pull the trigger if needed based on disease pressure in the field, pressure in surrounding fields and weather patterns, and hybrid type. Mainly spraying those D hybrids, ones that count on depth of kernel to get their yield punch. This group will spray twice if need be. One camp is not going to scout, but plans to spray twice for tar spot no matter what. This group has lived through the wrath of tar spot and doesn't plan on doing that again. If you're in the group that is not going to scout or spray, you may want to check your emails or something while I try to lay out the plan for the rest. We have learned by the school of hard knocks, homegrown tar spot that starts at the bottom of the crop in late June, early July will eat your lunch in the tune of about 60 bushel along with down corn. We need to be aggressive with this stuff. For you guys in the wetter areas where confirmed tar spot has been identified, if you're in the group that's not going to scout, but you do have one fungicide trip planned, spray a tassel. Remember, once we see the tar spot, it's been there 2 weeks. If your corn is uneven due to water damage, wait for the later corn to get tasseled or consult with your supplier on fungicides and surfactants to reduce pinched ear syndrome in corn pre-tassel. Now, if you're in the camp that is scouting and you see homegrown tar spot low on that plant, spray it. If the corn is not tasseled, take precautions not to get pinched ear syndrome. I would plan a second pass around R3 based on scouting. If no tar spot is present, but other diseases like GLS and northern leaf blight are present above the ear, I would also spray pre-tassel. If no tar spot is present and other diseases are on the leaves below the ear, our plot results would suggest waiting until brown silk, 10-15 days or more after tassel, and pull the trigger. If your plan is to spray for standability and protect kernel depth, you're looking for the back end protection here. If you're in the camp of not scouting but planning to spray twice, pull the trigger after all the tassels are out and then again in about 21 days. On that first spray, I would add an insecticide to make sure you don't have trouble getting pollinated. Locally low humidity in June, I think, has suppressed the tar spot, but I do expect later infections if this moisture and humidity continue. Everyone under irrigation needs to be on top of this issue due to the higher humidity. Everyone dealing with homegrown tar spot needs to remember what we learned from our past experiences. You need to drive the product deeper in the canopy. If you're going by airplane, helicopter, or drone, narrow up your swath width to prevent streaking. The bigger droplets that penetrate the canopy are under the aircraft, and the finer droplets tend to stay at the top of the plant at the outer edges. Flying the aircraft closer to the canopy doesn't give us better penetration, as air is bouncing off the ground will catch the spray on its upward lift. You'll most likely have to pay your applicator more to narrow up your swaths. Now, if there's no homegrown tar spot present low on the plant, stick with that full width spraying to keep as much of the product at the top of the plant, protecting those money-making leaves. My prediction is that tar spot alley will be a problem with our northern customers, northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, central Wisconsin, where the rains just keep coming. Rootworm beetles are starting to emerge, and the population will continue to increase over the next few weeks. April planted corn, already pollinated, is out of danger, but most May planted corn will be pollinating and needs to be scouted for silk clipping. Now, scouting for silk clipping is an easy one for the pest team. When you see tassels popping, you start scouting that week, not a month later, but that week. Tassels can be seen from your truck at 60 miles an hour, so there's no excuse for missing this one. Remember your replant areas, they'll need to be watched closer. The highest risk will be non-traded corn on corn and areas fighting resistance to the traits. Many of you have moved to conventional corn for seed savings and a lot of times higher yields. To sweeten the pot, many of you are not using an insecticide on your conventional corn. Now, under management, this is a good one, a good program. Rootworm traits have over the years reduced the overall issues that we fight with rootworm. Insecticide seed treatments control most seed-attacking insects and help some with corn rootworm. What we have noticed, though, when farmers or a group of farmers in one area switch back to conventional corn, rootworm and corn borer populations will start to rebuild. By the third year, sometimes we're dealing with lodged corn. There's no rescue for corn rootworm damage. Once you figure it out, Basically, all you can do is adjust your marketing strategy. If you must spray a field for silk clipping, most likely you have an extensive root feeding problem as well. Growers will call to ask my opinion on switching to conventional corn and going naked on the insecticide. My first question is, how heavy is the rootworm pressure? The usual response is, I don't know, but the guys in a coffee shop are getting along with the program just well. With a little bit of scouting, you can predict and prevent a train wreck about 3 years before it happens. Remember, by the time you have lodged corn, you've been giving up yield for a couple of years. Now is the time to scout for your pressure. Scouting will tell you conventional corn naked for you will work. Scouting now will tell you if resistance to a trait is happening in your field. Now, scouting has multiple facets to it. One, start by putting sticky traps in your bean fields to see what the pressure of the beetle is in your bean field. They're not out there feeding. They prefer corn. They're out there laying eggs. Second, you can watch these traps for what kind of rootworm you're dealing with. Mainly in Illinois, we deal with the striped western, but northern rootworm beetle are now moving in, especially in the northern part of the state. That is the green beetle. Now, the northern rootworm beetle has extended diapause, which means crop rotation is not very effective on this one. The northern seems to have more cases of resistance to traits than the western. Cornfields need to be scouted above ground, not only for silk clipping, but just overall rootworm beetle pressure. Scout your April corn to get a handle on what type and number of beetles you're dealing with. And that way you can gauge your pressure. The most important is to scout below ground, looking for rootworm feeding. Even in your traded corn, you'll find some rootworm feeding. They must eat to die. By collecting root balls and washing them off for inspection, you can rate and take pictures of your feeding to have when making the decision about next year's rootworm program. I like the method we use for the virtual farm visit. Trey and Jared bring in root balls from the field. They're soaked in a tank of water for a few days, and then we wash the soil off. One of the agronomists takes the root ball and snips off the roots one set at a time around the crown and putting them in piles of fed on or not fed on. This gives us a number to work with to gauge how the feeding is changing, as well as when the feeding took place. A number that can be used to gauge if we're developing resistance to a trait. Root examination will tell you a problem is rising a couple years in advance before you get yield loss or down corn. Now, I know, doing the root wash is not that exciting, but when you ask about conventional corn next year, and I ask that question about your pressure, you'll be able to surprise me with the right answer. Remember to document the evaluation with pictures and actual counts. If this seems more work than you want to partake in, you can sign the field up for the virtual farm visit program, and we'll do it for you. But you'll need to select the locations for the deep dive sites so we get in the hybrids that you're interested in. In many areas, this crop looks fantastic and continues to punch along in great shape. But I want to take a minute and talk to our customers dealing with the extreme amounts of rain. Our customers in southern Minnesota dealing with 17 inches of rain in June, northern Iowa, Wisconsin in the same boat. I can hear it in your voices on the phone, and I see it in your emails, the frustration, the anxiety that you're going through. Some are starting to talk about throwing in the towel on this crop. I can tell you from many years of experience in this business, we never walk away from a growing crop. Hang in there and fight the battle. It'll be worth it. Hearing many stories of a crop that came up uniform and for a period looked fantastic, but now is yellow, uneven, green over the tie lines, yellow in between, short, stunted. Let's talk about the unevenness. Most likely, the short yellow corn has close to the same leaf collars as the tall green corn. With near saturated soils, it's not getting the same growth per GDU. Corn of different height but the same growth stage has a much higher possibility of putting on ears and producing grain. When we have V7 corn a foot taller than V4 corn, the short corn will not put on an ear. What I'm saying is this corn is under stress and some yield has been lost, but it still has potential to come back from this stress. Many growers here were ready to throw in the towel last year as June burnt up our crop. We saw a tremendous rebound in that crop, even in the fields where cover crop issues locked that corn up for weeks. Now, hybrids will make a difference. The hybrids that we call Gs or L1s that flex ear size early have no doubt given up some potential, but they will gain some back in kernel depth. The hybrids that gain a lot of yield in late length and especially depth of kernel, what we call the L2D hybrids, it is still game on for these hybrids. The good news is most of the hybrids being planted up there are D hybrids. Stay in the fight. The first thing you need to deal with is pollination. Just how your corn looks now is how it's going to pollinate. The green corn over the tile will tassel first, and the yellow corn will be 5-10 days behind. Now this is a problem when it comes to silk clippers like rootworm, beetle, and Japanese beetle, because they're feeding on fresh pollen. So they'll travel to plants with fresh pollen, meaning a small number of beetles can be a problem because they keep moving to the next plant as it drops pollen. We need all this corn to pollinate. We need it as long a ears as we can get. The second issue, most likely you'll have to deal with tar spot. And you may be forced to spray early for the tar spot if infestation starts at the bottom of the plant. You may be able to get the first round of tar spot and the beetle in one shot. The next issue you'll deal with is how much nitrogen was lost. Some, maybe most of this yellow corn is yellow because of lack of oxygen. This tends to be worse in corn on corn because the microbes use up a lot of oxygen decomposing last year's stocks. I suspect when it dries out and oxygen returns, this yellow will go away. Adding nitrogen to yellow corn deprived of oxygen will not turn it green. Once it dries up, my recommendation is to pull some nitrate test and check for both nitrate and ammonium. Check it over the tile lines and compare it to where the short yellow corn was. If we lose too much, we will need to come back with some more nitrogen, 30, 40 pounds, either with high clearance or airplanes. We cannot let those D hybrids run out of N in August. After 15.6 inches of rain here in June of 2015, we saw a 60 bushel response to our airplanes when we applied Rescue N. Then, depending on the rain and the humidity, you may need a second shot of fungicide for tar spot. Now, we would suggest come out of the gate with guns a-blazing on that first spraying, using multiple modes of action on longer-lasting product. Come back that second time with probably a generic to help you finish out the season. This weekend I saw a lot of weedy fields, especially bean fields. First, be patient with your retailers. They're in this mess with you. We're going to have to deal with sprayer tracks this fall because we need to get these weeds dead before they get too far ahead of us. We may have to turn around in the field and leave wet areas for later. Better to deal with patches later than the whole field in trouble. This would be a good time to go by air, working with drones and aircraft where it fits. Weed control will take a concerted effort and everyone's part in this to get it done. Be prepared for this fall to have 24% corn and 29% corn coming into the combine head at the same time. Prepare your dryer operators and book some drying fuel to be ready. I know this seems like a long haul, but you guys are professionals. You've trained your whole life for this. You got it. If it was easy, everyone would be farming. The sign-up keeps coming in for Farm Journal Corn Soybean College event. Registration right now, we have growers from Maryland to California, from Minnesota to Kentucky. I love this diversity. It is so cool to hear from growers across the Midwest learning about their operations. A lot of information gets shared and learned from grower to grower throughout the event. Our outside classrooms are looking good. We're going to have some great teachable moments. Our price for the Corn Soybean College has stayed the same since 2021, and anyone who registers for the live event also gets registered for the winter virtual college, where we review the programs and add in the data from the plots that you'll visit here at Corn College. We have always had a group discount. If you register 10 or more people, you can save $75 a ticket, which has been popular with our retailers, bringing customers and employees. This year, we've added a second group discount based on your feedback forms, growers wanting to bring more farm employees or neighbors. We're introducing the truckload discount. If you register 5 or more people, you'll get $60 off a ticket. So grab a neighbor and fill that truck cab and take advantage of the truckload discount. And some groups have already registered 4 in your group. If you want to add one more, just let the office know and we'll get you in on that discount. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.